Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined once again for the latest DiBella's digest with the man himself, Lou DiBella. Lou, how's your week been?
It's been more of the same, Danny, but I'm okay. I mean, I'm healthy. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving here in the States, so everybody's going to be eating turkey. I'm not going to be with my family because most people are isolated. So I'm going to have a small Thanksgiving at home, but watch some football, eat some turkey, drink some good wine, and have a holiday. So I'm okay. I'm okay.
Initially, I couldn't work out why there was a football triple header tomorrow, and it gets me every year. I just completely forget that it's Thanksgiving.
I think they may have just canceled one game because of COVID.
It's
I'm not sure,
Sunday,
but
isn't it?
Yeah, it moved to Sunday. One of the games moved, yeah. So there's two games tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to them anyway. And I'll have a couple of cocktails, eat some good food, and make merry, as they say.
Well, I'll be watching the games. I'm not sure about the cocktails, but I'm certainly looking forward to the football. Another thing,
and I'm looking forward to the Danny Garcia fight with Errol Spence too. Actually,
you stole my segue. I can't believe this. I was just about to say the exact same thing. But yeah, another thing I'm looking forward to is December the 5th. A fight that you've talked about a number of times, kind of in passing on the digest, but we haven't really done a deep dive until now. And I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you is, if Errol Spence hadn't had his potentially life-changing accident, car accident, what sort of odds would you be giving on Danny Garcia to get the upset in this fight?
I would have made Spence a significant favorite, but I actually think that, look, the fight's obviously a lot more compelling now. Before the accident, I believe that talent-wise, maybe not resume-wise yet, but talent-wise, Spence was arguably pound for pound. I mean, he was up there at the top of the talent heap, in my view. Danny Garcia is always underrated. Danny Garcia is a winner, and he has quite a resume. But, he's not the biggest puncher. He's not the slickest guy. His defense isn't number one. Nothing is number one with Danny. But the package is a hell of a fighter. And in my mind, a significantly underrated fighter. I actually think now, after Errol got ejected from a Ferrari going 170 miles an hour, whatever the hell it was, I think now the odds that are out there right now, the bookmakers' odds at the moment, in my mind, are too long. I think that they're not showing a lot of respect for Danny Garcia and his innate ability. And look, there is uncertainty about Errol. I hope he's back to 100%. I want to see his brilliance in the ring. I think he's a tremendous talent. And I always said in the past, I would have made him a favorite against Crawford or anybody else at 147. But, he had a significant trauma to his body. He hasn't fought since. It's a testimony to his championship medal that he's getting right in the ring with a Danny Garcia in his first fight. I mean, if anyone could have argued or said, I need a more of a tune-up kind of fight, I need to see where I am after my accident, I mean, you got to give the man credit. He went right to a top level, world-class star fighter. And I think it's a really interesting fight. I think it's a lot more interesting and a lot more intrigue because of what Errol's gone through in recovery over the last year. I'm looking forward to it. And look, I think Danny Garcia would have given him a good go no matter what. And now I think maybe this is a little bit more of a favorable time for Garcia than it otherwise would have been. We're going to find out, next weekend.
As you pointed out, Danny Garcia is a solid fighter across the board, but each fight that he's lost has been exceptionally close, and it always seems to be that he could do that little bit more, that his work rate's not quite enough to match the guy that he ends up falling to. But is it too late in his career now to change that? Is that just him?
Fighters generally, what you see is what you get, and fighters don't change stylistically in dramatic ways very often. But he's also getting older as a fighter, and he's more likely to sit down on his punches a little bit more. I think when he's in with a guy like Spence, offense is part of your defense. So I think he's going to have to be active. I expect a real solid effort. I mean, you've always gotten a solid effort from him. I see your point that maybe he's just never quite seems to push it to the next level. But he's such a consistent performer in the ring. I think that, again, like I said it earlier, and I think you agree with me, he's not number one at anything, but he's just a super solid, consistent, top level guy. And I expect him to give a good show against Spence. I think if Spence is 100%, I favor Spence, and I think he should win. I think the odds are a little bit too long, given this is the first time we'll see Errol after the accident.
How likely is it that Errol Spence has looked amazing in the gym, fully up to 100%, even in sparring, but on the night itself, under the lights, that's when it becomes apparent that he isn't quite back to what he should be?
Well, look, an actual fight is always different than the gym or sparring. And while guys want to perform when they're sparring a great fighter in the gym, they also know gym rules and general sparring concepts, which is
sounds gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You're saying they know general sparring concepts and rules.
Right, and the general sparring concepts and rules is you're not attempting to hurt the guy that's going to go into a big fight or a major fight that's using as a sparring partner. You're not laying everything out. Now, the lines get crossed in sparring and people get hurt, absolutely. But the intention of the sparring partner is not to take the A-side fighter into deep waters, and it's not to hurt him. There's a recognition the fighter has to get in the ring, and prize fight and do what he's getting paid for. So it's a much different scenario the night of a fight.
How much of a factor, if any, do you think size will be in this fight? Because Danny's never been the biggest 147-pounder, and Errol Spence, people project that he will go up at least to 154 one day.
I think size is a major factor. I mean, I think Errol is significantly bigger. You saw, Mikey Garcia is a sensational fighter. In my mind, Mikey Garcia is not even a legitimate welterweight, but you saw the size difference and how it played into that fight. It put Mikey Garcia more into a survival mode than a risk-taking mode. And the night of the fight in the ring, when you watch that fight, the size difference was almost astounding. Errol Spence will be the bigger man in the ring that night. That is an advantage.
What is it that intrigues you so much about this fight? Is it the respect you have for Danny Garcia? Is it the intangibles about Errol Spence and his recovery, or a combination of all of it?
It's a combination of all of it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Danny. I think he's underappreciated. He's a good kid as a person, and he's a good fighter. I mean, and he's a very consistent, solid performer. And how many times have you seen him not in a fight in his career? I mean, when have you seen him not in the fight? So that's a big issue. I think Errol's talent level is extraordinary. I'm always interested in Errol Spence because I think he's one of the best pure talents in boxing. And then, of course, you want to see if what happened to him outside of the ring has an impact inside of the ring. I mean, honestly, he's been hurt way worse in that car accident than he ever got hurt in a fight. So he's still coming off a significant injury, and a significant trauma to his body. Thank God the injuries were nowhere near severe as they could have been. But when you're flung out of a car at that speed, the trauma on your body is pretty extraordinary. He hasn't fought since. So it has all those elements, two very good fighters, one that maybe would have been a much bigger favorite if not for intervening events. And then you have those intervening events that make it, all the more interesting.
We recently saw Spence's big rival, Terence Crawford, draw a pretty big viewership to ESPN for his fight with Kell Brook. This fight, Spence Garcia, will of course be on pay-per-view. How do you see it performing in the current marketplace?
I'm going to buy it. I think that a lot of hardcore fans are going to buy it. I think it's a good fight. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in Spence. I think they've done a pretty good job promoting it with commercials through NFL football games and major Fox events. I mean, when Fox does the pay-per-view, the promotion is pretty strong. I think it'll do pretty well. I think these are difficult times for a lot of people. I think it's not going to do as well as it may have done if there was no pandemic, but I do think it's going to perform fairly well. I do think it's a fight that hardcore boxing fans believe is a must-see. So, like for me, I said this for you all along months ago over the course of our 38 or 39 conversations, whatever it was, that out of the pay-per-views that were scheduled, I thought that the Charlo pay-per-view was excellent, but the single fight the two fights that had the most interest for me were Charlo Derevyanchenko and this fight. And I've been waiting for this fight, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think a lot of fans are. I'd be surprised if it doesn't do fairly well.
And projecting a bit further forward, if Spence is anywhere near back to his best and he gets past Danny Garcia in what will likely be another close fight, where does he go next? Because Terence Crawford's not going to be available, even if that fight could be made, until probably a year's time. Who's out there for Spence that he hasn't already faced that you'd like him to go against?
I mean, look, the one thing that he's not going to be longing for opponents because Heyman has a pretty dominant position in the welterweight division. And there are a lot of very good welterweights in Heyman's sphere. So, I mean, Spence hasn't fought Thurman, for example. That's a fight that would have interest for me. There are other guys in Heyman's sphere that are top-notch welterweights. Frankly, there are more alternatives for Errol than there are for Crawford.
Sure. I mean, Pacquiao is someone that seems to come up quite a lot. I remember Sean Gibbons saying around a year ago he wants him to steer clear of Crawford and Spence, but it seems to be more. They seem to be more amenable to those fights now.
It's a terrible fight for Pacquiao, in my view. I mean, if Spence beats Garcia, I would make Spence a major favorite over Manny. As much as I have, look, Manny's an all-time great, one of the greatest to ever fought, but he's still not a youngster. And honestly, you got to remember when he started, 112 pounds, 115 pounds when Manny started. I mean, he hasn't, he's not Spence, in my mind, will top out as a middleweight. Come on. I mean, Manny's nowhere near the same size, nowhere near as fresh. Look, I'll watch any fight with two great fighters, and if Spence beats Garcia, Spence and Pacquiao's a fight between two great fighters. But if I was managing Manny, or if I was Manny at this point in my career, that isn't the fight I'd be reaching for.
Now, before we let you go, I think it's a good opportunity to test if your football prognostication is as good as your boxing. So what are your predictions for the two games tomorrow? Because this video will go out after the games have happened, so people know whether you're right or not.
I think the Texans are going to beat Detroit, even though it's at Detroit and it's Turkey Day. But I mean, Detroit looked awful in their last game, and
Texans look great.
And I think the Texans look pretty good. And Deshaun Watson always brings that element of explosiveness. So I'm going to give an edge to the Texans. I hate the Cowboys. I want to see Washington beat them. But if you force me to pick a winner, I would pick a winner, and I would pick Dallas to win that game. Though I think that's going to be a very close game. I think the Washington defense is better than Dallas's defense. I think Dallas's offense is better than Washington's offense. I think that's going to be a fairly close game.
Great stuff. Well, everyone watching this will know whether Lou is right or not. So feel free to give him criticism or praise depending on the result. Really appreciate it.
Well,
go on.
To everybody that may listen who celebrates Turkey Day, happy Thanksgiving. And if this is going to go up after Thanksgiving, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. And to all my friends across the pond, always good talking to you.
Yeah, you can wish us an advance Merry Christmas.
Well, I'm going to talk to you before then.
I hope so. Yeah. Brilliant.
Right, yeah.
Cheers, Lou. Have a good week. Take care.
Take care.
Enjoy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.